This one's audio only, so feel free to listen to it while you play your Call of Duties or whatever you fucking brats are playing these days. Anyway, a crazy Christian sent me some religious propaganda, and that doesn't really happen too much anymore, so I was excited. And I figured I would share it with you guys because, this is always classic. The first, ostensibly this person is trying to answer some questions that I have posed on my YouTube channel throughout the years. And these arguments that she is making pertain mostly to the character of God, not so much the existence or non-existence of God. Those are two totally different arguments with two totally different sets of criteria. But this is about the character of God. And when I say the character of God, I mean character in the same way that Lord Voldemort is a character. The only difference between God and Voldemort, well, besides God being significantly more evil, is that a lot of people believe in God, whereas I would imagine very few people believe that there is literally a Voldemort, though I'm sure there are some. Anyway, this is her answer, and I'm just going to call her Kat because that was her name, and I like to call people by their names. Kat says that this is her answer to my question of why would a loving God send people to hell. She says, God's nature is justice, among other qualities. Yes, lots of other qualities, some of which are not of the highest quality. He cannot go against his nature. Why not? That seems like a limitation. If he did, he would cease to be God. If you break his rules without Jesus, you must be punished. He must punish you, or else he would cease to be God. If he ceased to be God, how would anyone be able to go to heaven? These sound like limitations on God. I mean, these are limitations on God. Let's say that he decides to save you from hell for being atheist, which he can't do because he can't go against his nature. But hypothetically speaking, let's say he could. The moment he brings you into heaven, he would cease to be God. If he ceased to be God, by what basis could anyone enter the kingdom of heaven? I mean, this is just nonsense. This is like some D&D rules nonsense. Oh, well, if this happens, then this can't happen, and he's all-powerful, but there's certain things he can't do. You're telling me that God, this all-powerful being, cannot take me to heaven, even if it is his desire to do so, because then he will lose his power, he will lose his kingdom. But you want to say that this is a limitless being? You want to say that this is an all-powerful entity that is capable of anything? He doesn't sound like it. He sounds like a being with limitations, just like we are. You might think this means that God is not all-powerful, since he cannot go against his nature. But this is not the case. But I won't answer that question because it will go off topic. I might answer it another time. You know, I would love to hear you attempt to work your sophistry on that question. How can you possibly reconcile the notion that God cannot save me, even if it is his will, even if he wants to save me, even if he desperately desires that I should be among the chosen in the kingdom of heaven? He cannot do it because if he does, he will face dire consequences, and in fact, heaven itself will be destroyed. God's godhood will be rescinded. That is definitely and unequivocally a limitation on the power of God. And justice works like this. I slap someone my age, she slaps me back. I slap my boss, he has me fired. I slap a police officer, he has me in a cell for a night. I slap the president, and it's a court trial plus jail. Justice is not only about the crime you have committed, it is also about who you have committed it against. And God is an all-powerful, infinitely holy, and infinitely righteous being. and way more powerful than the president. The very concept of justice means that I deserve to suffer in hell for all eternity, even for the smallest sin. It is not about the crime, it is about who you do it against. If you take issue with the above, then perhaps you should take issue with people going to jail for committing the same crime against one person and not going to jail for committing the same crime against someone else. Well, first of all, maybe I do take issue with that. But also, we're talking about earthly, demonstrable entities, and the president is not treated differently because he is some inherently more important being. He's treated differently because he holds a position of extreme authority. And with that authority doesn't just come the privilege of, if someone slaps you, they're in more trouble. There also comes the responsibility of that office. And maybe that has been tarnished to some extent, or perhaps to a great extent, here in America and in other countries across the world. But for the most part, we like to at least have the notion of leader accountability. We want to believe that the president can't just do whatever he wants. He has to represent the people. He has to stand for us. Now, maybe that's an idealized notion, but that is at least the expectation. That is what people desire out of a leader. God has absolutely no accountability whatsoever. He's just this all-powerful being that can do whatever he wants. And you talk about how he cannot defy justice because justice is his nature. Well, if he's God, he created the very concept of justice. Justice, it should be able to be whatever God wants it to be. So if this God that you are so convinced exists really does exist, why did he not create a perfect world where there was no suffering, there was no strife, there was no pain, there was no loss? There was none of the things that we associate with human misery. There's no mosquitoes carrying diseases, swarming into the eyes of starving children. There's no virgins being raped in a ditch in a third world country because their village has been taken over by radicals of one faith or political ideology or another. There's none of that bullshit, because it could simply not even be part of human nature. And I know that the inevitable Christian response to this is, oh, well, God did create a paradise initially, but we fell from it. Well, of course we fell from it. He engineered the fall. He puts a tree that's going to, that we're inevitably, he knows we're going to be curious about the tree. He has designed us to have curiosity about the tree. He can see what is going to happen. So there's no way you can say that this was a genuine offer of paradise to humanity if only we had followed this one little rule of not eating the fruit. So, once again, I want to say this is an argument about the character of God. God as a fictional character. Now, to the person I'm arguing with, he is not a fictional character. To me, he is a fictional character. But even a fictional character can still be appraised in terms of the values that they represent. And I don't think that God represents values that are really worth a fuck. The next question that Kat answers of mine is, why don't my good works mean anything? I don't remember ever asking some whiny horse shit like this, but maybe I did in some context. Kat's answer is, I do not have a problem with all of my good works meaning nothing to God, because if I did, any crime from the mild to the severe, e.g. murdered someone, robbed a bank, raped someone, beat someone, stole a chocolate bar, whatever, I can say, Your Honor, because I have volunteered for charity, helped people, and saved someone's life, I think you should let me go. What do you think the judge is going to say to me? And yet, people expect the same thing from God. They expect to get off scot-free from their deserved punishment just because they did good works. I don't understand by what standard, no matter how you word your little justice argument, an eternity in hell is not the deserved punishment for any crime in human history. There is no amount of suffering that you can cause or create in the world that warrants that sort of punishment against you, an eternity of absolute suffering. I cannot think of even the most deplorable, tyrannical dictator in history deserving such a fate. So, how can you possibly say that it is a deserved punishment? Because your argument is that it's because we've transgressed against such a perfect being. Well, if he was truly a perfect being, there would be no need for the majority of his creation, supposedly his greatest creation, to be cast into an eternity of pain and suffering for all time. If he was truly a perfect being, you would expect better results than that. But as for this scenario wherein the Good Samaritan steals the chocolate bar and the judge decides to throw the book at him because the law applies equally to everyone. Yeah, you know what? I honestly do think most judges would probably not throw the book at someone for a minor crime, especially in the light of their good deeds. Obviously, being a good Samaritan doesn't exempt you from a murder charge or a rape charge. But does it get you a little leniency when it comes to something like petty theft? Yeah, I imagine that it probably actually would. Now, it depends on the judge. But yeah, I think most judges are probably going to cut that person a break. Why do Christians worship an obvious tyrant? Her argument, or her response to this question is, this argument is based on emotionalism. God is not the way people want him to be, and therefore he does not exist. See, you're confusing the two different types of arguments here. We're making arguments against God's character. The character of God, and thus the character of his followers. The character of people like you who actually believe that this shit is true. That's a totally separate argument from whether or not God exists. When it comes to the argument about God's existence, my response is simply, where is the evidence that he does? Never seen a shred of it. Heard a lot of apologetics. Heard a lot of Christian sophistry. Haven't seen much in the way of empirical evidence, mathematical evidence, physical evidence, something that can be looked at, studied, examined, that actually leads us to believe that yes, maybe there is a God. The only things we have are some ancient eyewitness accounts that are tantamount at this point to mythology. All right, here's one. Why did God punish all of those people if he knew he was going to suffer that same pain? The stupidity of it. I don't understand. I don't know what the context of this was either, but I'm just going to read the response. Because he is just. Have you seen the part of Game of Thrones where Jon Snow chops off the guy's head even after the guy begs for his life and apologizes? Jon Snow does not enjoy it. He resents it, but he does it because he is a man who is just. He is a man who sticks with his convictions even if it's not enjoyable. And he had to act as the leader of the Night's Watch. It's the same with God. God obviously would not have been too pleased with the idea that he'd suffer for it, but just like Jon Snow, he stuck with his convictions and just punishments even though it would even though it meant he would not enjoy it later on. Well, this doesn't make sense, okay? Jon Snow is a mortal being. He is bound by the limitations of his society and what's around him. These criteria do not fit God. Justice, once again, is whatever God wants it to be. God can simply rewrite the scenario. There are plenty of times where God forgives people of their sins. In fact, that's the one power you said that God does have, is to forgive. He can redeem us. So he obviously has the ability to do that. So why are you talking about this scenario where Jon Snow he has no choice but to do this because of his convictions? Why are God's convictions such that he has to kill people? Why are God's convictions such that he has to treat his own creation as though they're insignificant chattel and they should just spend their lives in piety and worship of him and his greatness and his splendor, all without having any responsibility towards us whatsoever? Anything that we get from him is just this gift that we don't deserve, that we should just be happy that he even fucking thought of us in the first place. God is like a delinquent dad who you don't see for the entire year, but then on your birthday, he buys you like a bike or something, and then it's just supposed to all be forgiven. Like, well, your dad's a deadbeat loser who doesn't give a fuck about you, but he did get you that fucking bike. And you're just supposed to be the most grateful little shit in existence. I mean, Kat does make some more arguments in this video, but they all basically boil back to this concept of God's hands are tied. He's a perfectly just being, so he has to act with perfect justice. And of course, we all understand that perfect justice means an eternity of suffering for even the smallest of sin, because you're committing it against such a perfect and awesome being. And God is just powerless to change that system and create something better, even though he's all powerful. So that makes perfect sense. As long as you are adrift in a world of delusion. But if you're someone who is actually grounded in reality to even the most modest extent, these arguments kind of fall the fuck apart, like the continuity in Dragon Ball Z. But at least Dragon Ball Z doesn't expect us to believe that it's a true story. I'm the Amazing Atheist. Peace the fuck out.